There exists a way of living without truly seeing what stands in front of you. There exists a way of witnessing someone's life every single day, week, month, year, and never truly questioning. It's like looking directly at something, but your mind refuses to register it. It's like your consciousness filters out everything except what it wants to believe. That is exactly what Steph Curry had done with his father throughout practically his entire life. Curry was in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was visiting Dell's house, the house where he had grown up, the house he knew so well that he could navigate it even while sleeping. The same house in North Carolina where Dell Curry had retired from professional basketball in 2002. Curry was only 14 years old at that time. Curry was a boy. Curry simply accepted the reality that was presented to him. His father had aged within basketball. His father naturally exited basketball. His father chose to stay in Charlotte, where he had roots. It was so simple in the mind of a child. It was so perfectly normal. Now, years later, as an adult man, Curry entered that house as if nothing had truly changed in the deepest aspects. The furniture was slightly different. The photos on the walls had changed. There were new decorations, but the fundamental essence remained exactly the same. It was his father's house. It was the home of his childhood. It was the place where his married parents raised their children, where basketball was daily life, but was not the most important thing in life. The house exhaled peace in a way that Steph had always felt, but never truly named. Curry was helping Dell with something simple, the kind of thing that men do with their aging fathers. He was helping to fix something that had broken, or helping to reorganize a room, or simply helping to be present while his father navigated daily life. You cannot fail to see what stands before you when you are fortunate enough to be accustomed to seeing it every single day of your life. Familiarity develops a gentle blindness. Dell Curry had been a basketball commentator for the Charlotte Hornets since 2009. Curry vividly remembered when his father began that commentator job. Curry was beginning his own revolutionary professional career. Curry was a young player for the Golden State Warriors, with an absolutely uncertain future. Many doubted he would last in the NBA for more than one season. Curry saw his father in the stadiums with microphone in hand, commenting on games, keeping himself deeply connected to basketball in a completely different way than he had known on the court. It was suitable work for a former player. It was work that allowed his father to remain in Charlotte with his family. It was work that his father clearly accepted with dignity and professionalism. Curry never truly questioned any of this. Never seriously, never deeply. Why would he question it? His father seemed happy in Charlotte. His father had stable and respected work. His father had his complete family around him. His father had a life built. Curry presumed, so naturally that he had never challenged the presumption, that his father had simply aged naturally, withdrawn from competition gracefully, and chosen the relatively comfortable tranquility of Charlotte over any agitation of even greater ambition that might exist. It was a simple narrative. It was a narrative that Curry believed completely because he had never had reason to question it. Curry's childhood had been, in a certain way, extraordinarily privileged. His father was present. Curry vividly remembered his father taking him and his younger brother Seth to Charlotte Hornets games. Curry remembered being in the locker room with his father. Curry remembered his father passing technical advice about shots and defensive positioning. Curry remembered his father being present not only physically but emotionally, being the standard by which Curry would define what fatherly presence meant. When Curry became a professional NBA player, he never asked his father to sacrifice anything for him. Curry simply flew back to Charlotte when he could. Curry maintained regular contact. Curry accepted that his father had an established life in Charlotte, and Curry had an emerging life in California. It was an arrangement that worked for both. It was the common thing among professional athletes and their families who live in other cities. Curry never asked why his father did not pursue a higher coaching position with an important team. Curry never asked why his father did not become a coach for a famous NBA franchise. Curry never asked why his father apparently chose simple work as a local commentator in a Charlotte stadium instead of pursuing greater professional ambition that could have existed. Curry presumed, well-intentioned, that his father was happy with his choices. Curry did not see, because he had not looked, what was not being told. Dell Curry had a good relationship with all his children. Curry respected his father deeply as a player, as a life coach, as a man of character. Seth respected his father. Seidel, the younger sister who had played volleyball at Elon University, respected her father. It was a family that seemed well-adjusted. It was a dynamic that seemed healthy and normal. But there are things you simply do not see when you are living within them. There are stories that are not told because the person who knows them decides quietly to keep those stories confidential. There are invisible sacrifices that occur with such quietness and consistency that the people who benefit from them never truly realize the magnitude of what is happening. Curry was in Dell's kitchen talking about trivialities, about the next game, about how life was going, about nothing particularly important, when he noticed a strange expression passing over his father's face. Dell was looking at Curry in a way that Curry had never seen before in his entire life. It was a look that carried the weight of something profoundly unsaid. It was a look that carried years of silent accumulated decisions. It was the look of someone who had finally reached a point where he was ready, perhaps even needed, to tell a truth he had been keeping. But in that exact moment, Curry did not know. Curry was still living comfortably in the narrative he had always known. Curry was still witnessing the apparent normalcy of his relationship with his father, having no idea that the truth was about to turn upside down. Then Seth arrived. Seth was Curry's younger brother, not only younger in age, but born 1 year apart. Seth had also chosen to play professional basketball in the NBA. Seth had followed in the footsteps of his father and his older brother. He had chosen to dedicate his life to basketball as a professional career, exactly as both had done. Seth was a professional player, just like his brother, carrying the family legacy of excellence. Seth entered the kitchen in a way that was not casual. It was not a light entrance. It was the entrance of someone who had made an important decision. It was the entrance of someone who was about to say something profoundly important. Seth looked at Curry with meaning. Seth looked at Dell with respect. And Seth breathed deeply. That kind of breath you take when you are about to do something difficult. You can feel when the dynamic of a room changes fundamentally. You can feel when silent expectation fills a space in a palpable way. Curry felt that in his body. Curry realized that something was different. Curry realized that the casual conversation was about to end permanently. Dell stood silently. Dell left the kitchen. Dell left space between the brothers. Dell left space for a truth that had waited to be revealed, but that he had maintained with discipline. And in that moment, Curry still did not know that his life was about to change in ways he could not have anticipated. Curry still did not know that the narrative he had lived was incomplete. Curry still did not know that he was about to discover a silent sacrifice that had shaped his entire childhood and continued to shape him even in adult life. Seth asked Curry to go for a drive. It was not a request made casually or disinterestedly. It was a request that carried the urgency and gravity of what he intended to say. It was a request that carried a truth that Seth had carried alone and in silence for a long time, almost a decade of guarded knowledge. They enter Seth's car. Charlotte is a city that both know intimately. Charlotte is the place where both grew up. Charlotte is home to them. But in that moment, as they move through the familiar streets, Charlotte seemed different. It seemed to be carrying a new and uncomfortable weight. The streets seemed quieter. The traffic lights seemed longer. Seth drives for a few minutes in deep silence. The silence is heavy. The silence is laden with meaning. The silence is exactly that thing. You feel burning over you when someone is about to tell you something that will change everything. Then Seth speaks. His voice is calm, but laden. Seth. Steph, there is something I have never told you. Curry is confused. Curry does not know exactly what to expect. Curry is living in an entire world where everything about his father and his family seemed to be clearly understood. Curry was living in a narrative where Dell Curry was a former player who retired gracefully and became a happy and satisfied commentator. Curry. What are you talking about, Seth? Seth does not respond immediately. Seth is breathing. Seth is gathering the strength and courage to say words he had been keeping to himself for years. Words he had promised his father he would keep secret, even when that secret weighed against his conscience. Because Seth knew the truth. Seth had discovered the truth years ago. Seth had been keeping the truth because his father, his hero, his role model, had asked him to guard it. Seth. Do you know that Dad refused an opportunity with the national team selection? Curry looks at Seth with confusion. Curry does not understand exactly what Seth is saying. Curry assumes that Seth is talking about something minor, something that did not really matter, something that Dad had declined gracefully at some point in his career. Curry. What? Which opportunity? Seth breathes deeply. It is the kind of breath you take when you are about to divide your life into two, before and after. This revelation. Seth. It was not one, Steph. There were three. 3 times Dad was offered a position as national team coach. 3 times Dad refused. And there, in that moving car through Charlotte, while they circled through the streets they had known since childhood, Seth began to unfold the story that Curry had never known. A story that had been guarded. A story that had changed everything. Seth begins by telling that years ago, when he was older and more observant, he had discovered something that his father had kept private. Seth had overheard a conversation between his parents about an opportunity that had been offered. Seth had seen paperwork that his father kept carefully in a file that he thought was hidden. Seth had slowly realized, over weeks and months of reflection, that his father had made a choice. It was not a casual or inconsequential choice. It was a deliberate and repeated choice. The National Federation had offered a position to Dell Curry. It was a small or minor importance position. It was a position of genuine prestige. It was a position that would have required constant travel throughout the country and potentially throughout the world. It was a position that would have transformed Dell's career radically and absolutely significantly. And Dell had refused, not once, 3 times over several years. The first refusal happened when Steph was approximately 7 years old. Curry was at the height of childhood, those golden years where you still believe your parents are invincible and need them in a visceral way. Curry was beginning to develop a genuine passion for basketball, copying his father's movements. Curry was still completely dependent on his father for guidance, for inspiration, for constant daily presence. Dell refused that offer. The second refusal happened when Curry was approximately 12 years old. Curry was in middle school at Charlotte Christian School. Curry was beginning to be a truly serious player. Not just someone who enjoyed basketball, but someone with legitimate talent and determination. Curry still did not completely know if he could become a professional player. Curry still needed his father deeply. Dell refused again. The third refusal happened when Curry was approximately 14 years old, just before Dell retired from the NBA in 2002. Curry was entering high school at Charlotte Christian School. Curry was beginning to be recruited seriously by universities. Curry was beginning to become an adult person, but was still young and needed his father. Dell refused a third time. Seth explains with a voice that carries decades of understanding. Dad did not want to miss your games, Steph. Dad did not want to leave you alone with Mom during those months. Dad did not want to be traveling around the world while you were growing up here in Charlotte. Dad refused an opportunity that would have transformed his career internationally in a dramatic and permanent way. Dad chose you, Steph. Do you understand that? Your dad chose to be at your games. Your dad chose you over a genuine opportunity to be legendary in the international arena. Curry is in complete silence. Curry cannot process what Seth is saying. Curry is hearing words that Seth is saying with care and genuine weight. But these words do not match the narrative that Curry had built his entire life around. Seth continues with a voice that is simultaneously gentle and firm. Dad would have been national team coach, Steph. Dad would have traveled around the entire world in a leadership capacity. Dad would have left a much greater and more globally achieved legacy than being a commentator in Charlotte. Dad could have been absolutely legendary in the international basketball arena. But your dad chose to be at your basketball games. Dad chose to go to those loud gymnasiums. Dad chose to stay when you had an important game. Dad chose to be there when you were nervous. Dad chose presence over greater legacy. Curry can feel something breaking inside his chest, not in a violent way, but in a way that is absolutely inevitable. It is like a dam crumbling, and everything that had been contained beginning to flow freely. Curry can feel the narrative he had lived, the comfortable story he had created about his father, crumbling in real time. Seth continues, I discovered all of this approximately 10 years ago when I was older. I never told you because Dad asked me to keep it secret. Dad said he did not want you to know. Dad said he did not want that knowledge to be a weight that you would have to carry. But I saw you living without knowing the truth. I saw your father commenting in stadiums without a flicker of bitterness. I saw your father accepting the life he had consciously chosen. And I could no longer keep that secret alone. You deserved to know. Your dad deserved for you to know how much your dad sacrificed to be present for you. Curry feels tears coming to his eyes, not in a dramatically sudden way, but in a way that is as natural and true as breathing. Curry cannot speak. Curry is processing the magnitude of what Seth is communicating. Curry is understanding that his father had done something extraordinary and silent. Curry is understanding that he had lived a privileged life, more privileged than he had understood, because his father had chosen to be present above all else. Curry is understanding that he had not seen what was in front of him his entire life. Seth parks the car. Seth leaves Curry to process in silence. Seth leaves Curry to understand that Curry's world, the way he understood his father, his family, his childhood, had just turned completely upside down. Steph Curry's first reaction was not gratitude. It was not admiration. It was not elegant understanding. It was anger. It was hot anger that Curry had to release somehow. Curry exits Seth's car like an emotional hurricane. Curry needs physical space between himself and the truth that had just been planted in his mind. Curry needs air. Curry needs movement. Curry cannot breathe properly inside the car where the truth was sitting so heavily. Seth tries to calm. Let him breathe, Steph. Let him process. But Curry cannot breathe normally. Curry is hyperventilating. Curry drives back to Dell's house quickly. Curry is driving because he needs to do something. Anything. Curry needs confrontation. Curry needs answers that make sense. Curry needs someone to explain how this is possible. Curry enters Dell's house like a storm. Curry is a hurricane of confusion and anger and indignation. Curry, Dad, we need to talk, now. Dell is sitting in the living room. Dell sees the expression on his son's face, that mixture of anger, confusion, betrayal. Dell knows for certain that Seth finally told him. Dell had known that this day would eventually come. Dell had waited for this day with a complete mixture of fear and resignation, and even hope that maybe it would lead to understanding. Dell. Seth told you, did he not? Curry does not respond with words. Curry is too indignant for formalities. Curry is too confused. Curry is too hurt at having lived his life apparently in the dark about a fundamental truth of his childhood. Curry. Why did you never tell me? Why did I find out about this from Seth? Why not directly from you? Why did you let me live ignorant about your own sacrifice? Why did you never share this with me when it was information that affected my life, my childhood, my understanding of who you are? Curry is vomiting words. Curry is vomiting anger. Curry is vomiting confusion and hurt that is surging from this revelation, because Curry is understanding that his life had been founded on a truth of omission, a lie constructed by silence, by well-intentioned protection, but a lie all the same. Dell sits tranquilly. Dell is a model of calm even when his son is in emotional turmoil. Dell is at peace with his decisions despite the emotional storm of his son happening right before him. Dell breathes. Dell chooses his words with the care of someone who has planned them for a long time. Dell. Because it was not supposed to be known that way. Because I did not want you to feel responsible for my choices. Because I did not want you to see my sacrifice as a sacrifice, as if it were something I should be bitterly resentful about. Because the last thing I wanted was for you to carry guilt for the life you gained because your father was present to raise you. Curry cannot accept Dell's explanations. Curry is too indignant. Curry is too hurt at having been left in the dark about something so fundamental. Curry. But you did sacrifice. That is exactly what it is. You refused the opportunity to be a national team coach. 3 times you refused. You could have been much, much greater than you are now. You could have left a truly gigantic legacy. And you hid it from me, as if it were some kind of dirty secret. Dell remains calm. Dell knows with decades of depth that his son needs to say these things. Dell knows that Curry needs to process all the anger before he can reach some kind of genuine understanding. Dell finally speaks. Do you really want to know why I refused? Curry stops abruptly. Curry was not expecting his father to actually respond. Expected more of a debate, more smoke, more conflict. Curry was not expecting his father to respond with such clarity. Dell begins again, his voice carrying the quietness of genuine certainty. Dell. Because, do you know what was the best decision I ever made in my life, Steph? It was being at your games when you were 12 years old. It was seeing you play at Davidson College when absolutely nobody, not one power program, believed in you. It was being there when you were drafted by the Warriors and your professional life began. It was being at your first NBA games when you were becoming exactly the player I always knew you could be. Curry feels something changing inside him. It is like a door opening slowly. It is like anger beginning to transform into understanding. It is like indignation beginning to melt under the heat of a father who was trying to communicate truth. Dell continues with a voice that is simultaneously strong and gentle. Sacrifice is when you want one thing, but you force yourself to do something else. Sacrifice is when you carry mental remorse about what you chose. Sacrifice is when you complain, even silently, about the path you took. I did not sacrifice, Steph. I chose. I chose to be at your games instead of traveling around the world. I chose your future instead of my potentially greater legacy. I chose real presence instead of potential fame. And you know what? I do not have a single day of remorse. Not one day. Curry feels something breaking inside him again. But this time it is not a breaking of anger or betrayal. It is a breaking of emotional barrier. It is a breaking that allows understanding to enter. It is a breaking that allows Curry to begin to see his father not as someone who sacrificed, but as someone who chose clearly and lived that choice without remorse. Curry. Why did Seth know and I did not? Dell responds with patience that comes from preparation. Because Seth is your older brother. Seth discovered by chance he overheard a conversation he should not have overheard. Seth was old enough and observant enough to understand what was happening. I asked him to keep the secret because I did not want you to have this weight. You are my oldest son, Steph. You are the one who is out in the world making a mark. You are the one who is changing the sport. I did not want my sacrifice or my choice to be a weight that you carried while living your life. But you found out. Seth finally could not keep it anymore. And now you have to decide how to process this truth. Curry is in complete silence. Curry is understanding that his father did something extraordinary. Curry is understanding that his father does not want him to feel guilty. Curry is understanding that his father wants him to simply understand that there is more than one way to measure success. Curry walked to his father. Curry embraced him. It is not a casual embrace. It is an embrace that carries genuine gratitude, remorse, love, understanding, all together in physical form. It is an embrace that changes the relationship between father and son. Curry spent that entire night awake. But this time, it was not anger that kept him awake. It was genuine gratitude. It was deep understanding. It was a realization that changed everything about how he saw his father, his childhood, his own priorities. The next day, Curry sits with his father again in that same kitchen. This time, there is no emotional urgency. This time, there is no anger or defensiveness. This time, there is only a father and his son sitting together in comfortable silence in the place where the son had grown. Up. Curry. Dad, I need you to tell me everything. Every detail. Every moment. I need to fully understand how you made these decisions. Dell looks at his son with genuine admiration. Dell sees maturity in his son's face. Dell knows that his son is finally ready to hear the complete truth without letting raw emotion take over. Then Dell begins to tell. Dell begins to unfold the story he had guarded in his own heart for so many years. Dell tells about the first offer. Dell tells with detail about how he made the decision in that specific moment. When Curry was 7 years old, when Dell was still at the peak of his professional career, when the opportunity was genuinely extraordinary. Dell tells how he knew, with intuitive certainty that came from his father's heart, that this was the wrong moment. Dell tells how he knew that his children were still too young. Dell tells how he felt immediate peace with that decision. Dell tells about the second offer. He describes how it was even more tempting because Dell was older, his children were growing, and it seemed like maybe now was the time. But Dell tells how he knew, again with clarity that came from somewhere deep, that it was not yet time. Dell speaks about how he refused again, and how he felt that same strange but certain peace. Dell tells about the third and final offer. He describes how he knew it was the last time the Federation would ask. Dell speaks about how that was really the final opportunity to leave commentary and enter the international arena in a significant way. Dell speaks about how he reflected deeply on it. Dell speaks about how he refused a third time, with only a few months before his final retirement in 2002. Curry is listening to every word. Curry is understanding his father's decisions in a new context. Curry is understanding that his father was not running from ambition. His father was choosing different priorities. His father was choosing a different type of success, one that was not measured in titles or fame, but in presence and impact on the lives of his children. Then Sonia enters, Curry's mother, Dell's wife, the woman who had lived alongside all these silent decisions. Sonia sits with the two. Sonia has genuine tears in her eyes. Sonia breathes deeply. Sonia, your father made me swear secrecy about all of this. I wanted you to know for years, Steph. I wanted you to understand the sacrifice, or the choice, as he prefers to call it, that he made. I wanted you to understand the kind of man your father really is. But I respected his wishes because I understand that he was trying to protect you. Now you know, and now you can truly understand the kind of legacy your father left, not in international arenas, but in the hearts of his children. Curry embraces his mother. Curry kisses his mother on the forehead. Curry thanks his mother for keeping his father's secret while maintaining his honor intact. Curry calls Seth that night. Curry says, "Thank you for telling. Thank you for not keeping that secret anymore. You did the right thing." Curry calls Sidel, his sister, the next day. Curry asks, "How did you keep this during all this time?" Sidel responds with love that Curry can hear through the phone. "Because I knew that Dad wanted to protect you, Steph. Because I knew he loved you too much to let you carry that weight. The entire family is connected in that moment through telephone lines. The entire family is understanding that Dell Curry had made an extraordinary choice. The entire family is celebrating that choice in a way that it had never celebrated before. Curry spends a few days in Charlotte. Curry spends significant time with his father. Curry learns about each decision in detail. Curry learns about his father's mentality that allowed him to refuse power and fame. Curry learns about the kind of man his father really is. Curry also thinks about his own children during those days. Curry thinks about the kind of father he wants to be. Curry thinks deeply about the kind of presence he wants to offer. Curry thinks about the choices he will make with his children, growing in a world where pressure for external success is constant. Curry realizes that his father left a much greater legacy than any international title would have left. His father left a legacy of truly present fatherhood. His father left a legacy of priorities that were clear and non-negotiable. His father left a legacy of a man who truly knew what mattered. Before Curry leaves Charlotte to return to the Warriors and his professional life, he and his father have one final conversation. It is a conversation that Curry will never forget for as long as he lives. Curry: Dad, thank you. Thank you for being present when you could have been somewhere else. Thank you for being at my games when you were refusing extraordinary opportunities. Thank you for choosing me instead of greater professional ambition. Thank you for showing me, through your entire life, what really matters. Dell looks at his adult son. Dell sees the extraordinary man his son has become. Dell sees a professional player of historical caliber. Dell sees a father, too. Dell sees a person who now understands what presence means. Dell responds with clarity that comes from complete certainty. You were always what mattered, Steph. You were always the reason. You were always the priority. And I would make exactly the same choice again, without a flicker of hesitation, without remorse, without regret. Curry returns to the Golden State Warriors. Curry returns to his professional life. Curry returns to his family in California. But Curry is profoundly different now. Curry sees his father in a completely new light. Curry sees his father not only as a man or a former player, but as a hero. Curry sees his father as a man who knows what really matters because he has lived that knowledge. A few weeks later, Curry is at Oracle Arena. Curry is watching a KDA video of his father commenting on a Charlotte Hornets game. It is a completely normal video of a completely normal commentary of a professional basketball game. But Curry sees it completely differently now. Curry sees a man who chose to be in that stadium. Curry sees a man who refused to be anywhere else. And when Curry makes his next three-point shot, that iconic shot that made his mark immortal in basketball, Curry points to the sky. But it is not the gesture that Curry normally makes. This time. It is not an automatic religious gesture. This time, Curry is pointing to the sky, thinking specifically about his father. Curry is pointing to the sky as a way to say thank you. He is pointing to the sky as a way to honor his father's choice. He is pointing to the sky as a way to say that he finally understands. That true fatherhood is invisible. That real presence receives no awards or recognition. That true choices do not complain or carry remorse. That true legacy is not fame or international titles or traveling around the world. True legacy is being there when your son needs you. True legacy is being at his games. True legacy is having clear priorities. Curry understands now. Curry honors his father. Curry wants to live this way too, with clarity about what matters, with willingness to refuse power in favor of presence, with understanding that true success is measured in relationships, not in achievements.